today?
Oh, I don't think it started yet. And It has started now. Go again, Matt.
Oh, hey, I'm Matt Early, and I am the Wisconsin representative for the Beyond Coal campaign. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
And I am Katie Hogan. I'm the volunteer coordinator with the Sierra Club Wisconsin chapter. I'm happy you guys could join us too. And just a little bit of brief introduction. Today we're going to be talking about the NTEC Fracked gas plant, as Matt is going to tell us all about what that abbreviation means, what it is, why we're concerned about it, and way you guys can take action on this issue. And we'll make sure any additional information you need is included when we post this video. So Matt, want to go ahead and share your screen and get us started?
Will do. And like clockwork, here we go. Can you all see? All right. We're cooking with gas now. Okay, here we go.
Did you hit present now in the Hangouts? Oh, there we go. I can see it. Thanks.
We got it? All right, let me just do that. Perfect. We ready? Everybody good? All right. Thank you for joining us again. Again, my name is Matt, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about NTEC, which is a fracked gas plant that has been proposed to be built in Superior, Wisconsin. As you can see, Superior is right up at kind of one of the northernmost tips of Wisconsin, right on Lake Superior, and right across the river that runs out of Lake Superior is Duluth, Minnesota. Hold on, I'm going to backtrack here. So Sierra Club is working currently to prevent it's called the Namaji Trail Energy Center, or NTEC. It's a frack gas plant, and we're trying to prevent it from being built in Superior. NTEC is a joint project of Wisconsin's Dairyland Power Cooperative and Minnesota Power. So if it were ever to be built, some of the electricity produced from the plant would be used by Minnesota Power for its customers in Minnesota, and some of it would be used for Dairyland Power Cooperative's customers in Wisconsin. The plant can run at a maximum capacity, if again it were to be built, of 535 to 625 megawatts. It's a combined cycle frac gas plant, so that means that it uses both gas and steam together to produce more electricity than the traditional, what they call simple cycle plant. In 2017, Dairyland and Minnesota Power announced their plans to build this plant. The plant would cost, if it were to be built, $700 million ish, and it would be slated to come online by 2024. But we intend to make sure that that never happens. The utilities maintain that the plant's needed to complement their existing and future renewable resources. And they say that they need it to have a backup source of power when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. But what we want to talk about today is what would happen if that plant were built, and why that plant actually is not needed. To talk a little bit about fracking, fracking is the process that is used to extract gas, the type of gas that would be used to power this plant. And fracking, within that process and the transportation processes around fracking that make gas available, it's a very dangerous, disruptive process just in the extraction. Water, sand, and chemicals are injected into rock at a high pressure, and that allows the gas to flow out. Fracking causes incredible instability in the earth. It can lead to localized earthquakes, and it's really disruptive around fracking sites and the communities that exist around fracking sites. The chemicals that are used in fracking can cause serious air and water contamination just in that extraction process. What's more, a lot of methane is released in that extraction process and actually leaks out during the transportation of frack gas. And methane is a 30 to 80 times more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. So as you can see, this just extracting fuel for this plant is incredibly unsustainable and disruptive. They say that frack gas is a bridge to renewable energy, but we maintain that frack gas is actually a bridge to nowhere. Frack gas, it's 50 to 60% less CO2 generated in the process of burning frack gas. So that sounds, and that's kind of the argument of utilities often, is that it's much less carbon intensive than coal. However, as I mentioned earlier, lots of methane is released in the process, and there have been studies recently that have shown that instead of a 50 to 60% less climate disruption in the extraction and transportation and burning of frack gas, actually with that methane, it makes it pretty much an even trade-off. So there really are no carbon emission advantages from going from coal to gas. And that's one of the first things that I think we should realize. The hundreds of millions of dollars being slated for investment for this NTEC plant, it's going to make, if it were built, Dairyland reluctant to utilize the solar, wind, storage, and energy efficiency that's out there now, and that continues to be more available and at falling prices. So our argument is that if the plant is going to be built, instead of being a bridge to renewable energy, it's actually going to be a wall, a barrier to Dairyland and Minnesota Power taking more action and investing more money in renewables, which is where we need to go. NTEC would leave Wisconsin customers on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars in stranded costs. We consider a plant a stranded asset when a fossil fuel plant, when the cost of keeping it running and operating is actually winds up being a lot more expensive than operating clean energy resources. So if you look at this, these two graphs here, or the graph and this information above it, you can see that the NTEC cost estimate, once built, we project it as being about $52 per megawatt hour. If that investment instead went into clean energy portfolio and invested in the different types of clean energy and storage and efficiency that we mentioned, we estimate that that would be $38 per megawatt hour. So it's a huge savings if they were to commit to clean energy just in economic terms. The estimated savings over the life of the plant, we estimate as being over $230 million. And NTEC, we project would be a stranded asset by 2032. So that would be 8 years after its launch. It would already be costing more to run than it would be to buy clean energy off the market or to commit to clean energy. So it very, very soon after being built would become obsolete. The people who are paying for it in their, ratepayers and their utility bills would be carrying that cost, and they would be carrying it for years. Most of these plants, in order for the utilities to get their money back out of it, they need to operate them for at least 30 to 40 years. So we project out that, for probably 32 of those years, if they wanted to run it for 40 years, that plant would be running at a loss, which is what we're seeing with coal plants in the state and nationally right now. One of the other really negative, potentially negative aspects of building and running this plant would be what it would do to the water in the Superior and Duluth area. Constructing the frack gas plant would require that utilities destroy nearly 20 acres of wetland on the Namaji River. As you all know, wetlands are critical resources for reducing flooding risks for communities. And those risks are increasing as climate scientists predict more heavy rain events due to climate change. So those wetlands are actually very important to preserve, and they would be destroyed. The proposed plant would be located on the top of a steep slope with a historically high risk of erosion, potentially causing stormwater runoff. And as increased floods continue to be an issue, this is going to be even more dangerous. So they're building it in what we feel is an unstable position from the get-go. Utilities also estimate that they would need to pump almost 3 million gallons of water a day to operate the plant. According to press reports that we've read, this is actually very similar to the daily water usage of the city of Superior. So it's a huge amount of water, almost inconceivable. A pumping test in 2014 found that 100 feet of drawdown in the aquifer, so the groundwater where their water source, where the water would be drawn from, and where these wells would be extracting water, it'd be possible that 100 feet of drawdown would be possible after 400 days with a pumping rate of 1,000 gallons per minute. That's only half of the average daily pumping rate needed for the project, so it's clearly unsustainable. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources has already said that they feel, based on their own analysis, that the pumping, the amount of groundwater needed, it very well could not be sustainable. And that's just simply a risk that we can't take. In 2019, the Minnesota Public Utility Commission gave permission for the plant to move forward. They have to get permission both in Minnesota and in Wisconsin because the energy produced by the plant would be sold in both states. So it was approved by the Public Utility Commission in Minnesota, but the Public Utility Commission did not require an environmental impact review. And the Sierra Club and our allies, we appealed that decision. And late last year, an appeals court ruled that the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission had to consider environmental impacts. Instead of actually doing that or taking steps, Minnesota Power turned around and appealed that ruling. And in March of 2020, so last month, the Minnesota Supreme Court agreed to hear the case to decide whether they actually had to look at environmental impacts. Minnesota Power argues that because the plant is being built in Superior, even though you can, almost throw a rock and hit Minnesota from where the plant's going to be, that there shouldn't be any consideration of environmental impacts because, I don't know, maybe they feel like the border is, a solid wall or something where the emissions and the water pollution and the carbon emissions won't affect Minnesota somehow. There's not a timetable yet for the Supreme Court to decide on whether to require this environmental impact statement or consideration to be undertaken. So we're waiting to hear on that. In Wisconsin, late last year, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission gave Dairyland Power permission to start construction on the plant. However, Sierra Club and Clean Wisconsin filed an appeal because PSC commissioners didn't take the serious environmental impacts into consideration before they gave permission to build the plant. So currently the plant is not under construction and it can't be until this appeal is heard. The appeal is due to be heard in May or June. We don't have a timetable on that one yet either. There's currently a stay on the appeal, so we know that the process won't get started until late spring, early summer. Thinking about the last slide and talking about water, we really feel like our best hope right now for stopping this plant is the Department of Natural Resources water permitting process. The DNR has already publicly stated that they don't believe the water needed to run these high capacity wells for the plant is sustainable, and they feel like it would negatively affect the water table based on all the analysis that they've seen. Sierra Club has also introduced independent analysis that agrees with that conclusion. There are concerns about wetlands destruction, as we mentioned, and runoff in the case of flooding. So it's to us clearly unsustainable. This water permitting process is currently due to start in late spring or early summer. The DNR has not given a date on when they would start that. but we're looking forward to the public interaction phase of that, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. So what can you do to help? We're going to turn it over to Katie to talk a little bit about if you're motivated by the NTEC project and want to help us stop it, some of the steps that you can take to help shut it down. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Matt. And just like Matt was saying, the water permitting process that is going to go through the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, aka the DNR, is going to be an opportunity for us to make a really big impact. And like he said, as of right now, those processes have not started yet, but that's something you can stay tuned for. But we do have something concrete that you can do right now, and it's a very quick thing as well. But if you have not heard of it, the Wisconsin Conservation Congress is a citizen-elected board that advises the Natural Resources Board on environmental policies. It holds these hearings around the state each spring to encourage public input on various environmental resolutions. It is going forward completely digitally this year. And normally it holds hearings in each of the 72 counties in the spring, and they can present resolutions, vote on the resolutions, and there's also a questionnaire associated with the Conservation Congress. And this year we are asking people to help us introduce a resolution in whatever county you live in to ask the DNR to not give NTEC these water permits that they would require to pump that extreme amount of water from the groundwater in Superior. So again, if you are looking for a way to take action, helping us pass that resolution and introduce it into the Conservation Congress is a really easy, incredibly important way that you can help stop this project going forward. And if you want to learn more about the Conservation Congress and the resolution, when we post this video, we will include a link to our blog that outlines the resolution introduction process and how it works, and how to introduce it on this specific topic. And then as well, if you haven't joined us for one of our Act at Home chats before, our next one will be next Monday at 3 p.m. as well. And that one's going to be all about the Conservation Congress, how to introduce resolutions, the questionnaire, what we're introducing resolutions about, all of that. And we'll make sure that we talk about that when we post the video as well. So if you're looking for ways to take action, those are a couple simple ways, and I'll make sure that you all see the resources for how to get that done. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, you all.